By the summer of 1863, the American Civil War had reached a breaking point. 2 years of fighting had bled the nation almost dry, yet neither side had delivered a decisive blow. The Confederacy had survived longer than most anyone expected, and the Union had endured defeats that shook public confidence and public resolve. General Robert E. Lee believed that the war could still be won, not by dragging it out, but by ending it with one bold stroke. If the Army of Northern Virginia could defeat the Union Army on Northern soil, public support for the war might collapse. European powers might recognize the Confederacy, and Washington might be forced to negotiate. So Lee marched north. What followed at a small Pennsylvania crossroad town called Gettysburg would become the most decisive and costly battle ever fought on American soil, and a turning point from which the Confederacy would never fully recover. Welcome to our republic.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political band,
sailors and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not one small step for man.
Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
We pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Gettysburg was not chosen. It kind of just happened. Lee's army moved into Pennsylvania seeking supplies, rest, and opportunity. His men were hungry, barefoot, and stretched thin after years of fighting, but they were confident. They had beaten Union armies repeatedly in Virginia and believed they could do so again. The Union Army of the Potomac pursued Lee, desperate to provide a northern disaster. Just days before the confrontation, President Lincoln replaced its commander. General George Meade took command with almost no preparation time, inheriting an exhausted army in an immediate crisis. Neither commander intended to fight at Gettysburg, but roads converged there, and armies always follow the roads. No, that's not always true. Day 1, July 1st, 1863. The battle began as a meeting engagement. Union cavalry under General John Bufford arrived first. Bufford understood the terrain instantly. South of the town lay the high ground, Cemetery Hill, Cemetery Ridge, and the Round Tops. Whoever held that ground would control the battlefield. Buford dismounted his cavalry and delayed advancing Confederate infantry for hours. His men fought stubbornly, buying time with the carbines against rifles. Union infantry arrived by mid-morning, but Confederate forces steadily increased. By afternoon, the Union line collapsed under pressure and retreated through the town of Gettysburg itself. Street fighting erupted. Civilians hid in cellars as bullets shattered windows and walls. Union troops were driven south and regrouped on the high ground Buford had identified. Lee had won the day technically, but he had failed strategically. The Union now occupied the strongest defense position in the area. Day 2, July 2nd, 1863. Lee believed the Union line could be broken at its end. He ordered attacks on both flanks, planning to roll up the line. What followed was actual chaos. The Union left on the Union left. Sorry, this is so just on the Union left. Confederate troops surged into Devil's Den, the wheat field, and the peach orchard. The terrain was broken, visibility was poor, command control nearly impossible. Units attacked, retreated, and attacked again without knowing who held the ground minutes earlier. Little Round Top became a key position. Union troops arrived barely in time. When ammunition ran low, they fixed bayonets and charged downhill, shattering the Confederate assault. On the Union right, the fight erupted on Culp's Hill. The Confederate troops briefly seized the ground but could not hold it. Fighting continued into darkness, and by nightfall, Lee had committed massive forces and suffered enormous casualties. But the Union line remained intact. Day 3, July 3rd, 1863. Lee now faced reality. His flanking attacks had absolutely failed, but to retreat without another attempt would concede the campaign. He chose to strike the Union center. After a massive artillery barrage that shook the ground for miles, roughly 12,500 Confederate soldiers advanced across open fields towards Cemetery Ridge. The ground offered no cover. Union artillery and rifle fire tore through the ranks. Men fell by the hundreds. Units dissolved. Small numbers reached the Union line. Briefly breaking through, there was no support. The attack collapsed. Pickett's charge was over in less than an hour. Lee's army had been shattered. Gettysburg was not just generals and maps, it was men enduring unimaginable violence. Soldiers fought in suffocating heat. Water ran out. Wounded men lay screaming for help for days. Surgeons worked nonstop, amputating limbs without anesthesia beyond whiskey. The fields and farms surrounding Gettysburg became mass graves. Civilians helped bury the dead, often shallowly, unable to keep up with the scale of destruction. And the cost was staggering. Over 50,000 casualties in 3 days. Now, Lee retreated to Virginia. The Union did not destroy his army, but the Confederacy lost its offensive capability in the East. At the same time, the Union captured Vicksburg, splitting the Confederacy in two. And from that moment forward, the Confederacy fought defensively. The war would continue for nearly 2 more years, but Gettysburg marked the beginning of the end. Months later, Lincoln would stand on that battlefield and redefine the war's meaning, not conquest, but preservation. Gettysburg was not inevitable. It was not planned. It was forged by decisions, formed by decisions made under pressure, by soldiers holding ground at impossible costs, and by a nation testing whether it could survive its own division. 3 days decided the direction of the war. 3 days reshaped the future of the United States. This one was a little rough for me to read. I don't know why. I apologize for how fragmented and shattered it was and all that kind of stuff. But, hey, 89 of these episodes, one is okay. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. And remember, history isn't boring. It's the story of 3 days in July when the fate of the Union was decided by exhausted men holding the high ground, refusing to yield, and turning a desperate gamble into the moment the war began to turn. I'll see you next time.